What often happens is our role can get mixed up with our identity. I gave you the example of when someone says, "Who are you?" we often state our role. Here's the challenge with that. When our role is our identity and it's mixed in with our identity, when things happen in life, we can feel very devastated. Hello and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast. Each week, my guest and I share our vulnerable behind-the-scenes stories of giving ourselves permission to take off our masks, let go of expectations, and embrace our own path of freedom and authentic connection. I am your host, Bianca Hughes, a lover of authenticity. Hello and welcome to the Authentic Wednesday podcast. My name is Bianca Hughes and I am your host of the podcast, and it is a solo episode with me today on the podcast. So last week we had my guest on the show, Patricia, and that was on episode 66. This is actually, today is episode 67. And we talked about what it really means to be a wife, her struggles with being a wife, and realizing that her role as a wife is not her identity. And I kind of agreed and kind of shared with her some of my thoughts on that. And she shared her discovery about that. And so I really wanted to talk a bit more about role and identity, because I have found it's been such a key player in myself in growing and getting stronger in my identity and knowing who I am as that continually evolves. Because do remember, our identity does evolve, our purpose evolves, so everything evolves. But despite it evolving, I think it's really helpful to have a good foundation and a firm understanding of the two. So I'm just going to give it to you really simple, as much as I can, as quick as I can. And if you are at home or you're in a place where you can write, I definitely advise you to take a pen and paper. And if you are driving, you can do this later on. So the first thing, what is a role? So a role is what we do or what you do. So a role would be a sister, a daughter, whatever, my career as a therapist, a business owner. Those are roles. And how we identify a role in the sense that our responsibilities for the roles are changing. And so the next thing is, what is our identity? An identity is who you are. And so that's the essence. That incorporates your personality. It incorporates your characteristics. So for example, when someone says to me, "Well, who are you, Bianca?" And I'm just so many different things. But I would probably say, well, I'm a lover of authenticity. I am smart. Right? Because that's talking about my characteristics. Another thing would be, I am someone who is committed and highly values growth. So our identity is both those personalities, the characteristics, and our values. So when someone says, "What do you do?" that would be your role, because you're going to say, well, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a this. And then when someone says, who are you? This is a trick. Because most people, when someone says, "Who are you?" they still answer with the question about role. So let's say a therapist, blah, blah, blah. So, but really, who are you? What's important to you? What makes you smile? What makes you sad? What gets on your nerves? What excites you? What gives you passion? So if you think about it in that sense, that's what it really means about who are you when we're talking about identity. What often happens is our role can get mixed up with our identity. I gave you the example of when someone says, "Who are you?" we often state our role. Here's the challenge with that. When our role is our identity and it's mixed in with our identity, when things happen in life, we can feel very devastated. So, for example, if you lose a job and your job is your identity, it's who you believe you are, how you think, and how you move. When you lose that job, you feel like you are lost. If you identify with being rich and having wealth, if you lose money, or even doesn't even have to be a big amount, but it could be a small amount, maybe you made a financial mistake, you are going to feel that deeply, because for you, your identity is money and riches. If your identity is in a relationship or being in a relationship, that gives you a sense of worth and meaning. When you're not, or when something goes wrong, you're going to feel like something is innately wrong with you. And so those are kind of like some great examples. Another one is like if your role is as a parent, whether it's a mom or a dad, when your children grow up or when they leave the home, you feel like you no longer know who you are anymore because you've made that your identity. But remember, parents, you were someone before you had children, and you are still that person. You have this added on role and responsibility, yes, but you're still you, and your you may have evolved. So if this is you and you can relate, you might say, well, what should I do? How do I know what my identity is? Where do I start? And I want to share that because it's so important, because what happens when our identity is our identity and not our role, we get a sense of freedom. We get more of a deeper connection. Definitely, as we're always talking about authenticity here, we begin to connect with our authentic self and feel like our authentic self, because we're not wearing these roles or using these roles to determine our identity, because really our identity is the foundation. And so can you imagine if your identity, your foundation is a job, and you lose that job? That's a rocky foundation. So this is a part where you can pause, come back, listen, but definitely get a piece of paper. So I hope you're ready. Now, what I want you to do is just get a piece of paper. It doesn't matter what size it is, probably a decent size, at least. If you get A4, great. If you can get half of that, was it A3? That's fine. And so what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line down the middle, right? And so this would be a vertical line down the middle, okay? And then you're going to draw a horizontal line across at the top. And on one side, you're going to put identity, and the other side, you're going to put role. Now, I first want you to identify your roles. Don't have to do too many. So for me, for example, I have my role as a therapist, a daughter, a business owner, a friend, and an aunt, right? Those are some of the roles that I can think of at the top of my head. So go ahead and write that down. I'll give you a few moments. And if you want to pause, you can always pause the podcast. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to take each role, and for just intensive purposes, this is a podcast. I'm probably just going to do one or two of these, but you can do this for each, and you can do as many as you want. We're going to look at the characteristics needed to fulfill these roles. So for example, therapist. And so this is where you're going to write these examples on the side where it says identity. So for example, in my column of role, I have therapist. Now on the other side, on identity, I'm going to ask myself the question, what do I need to be? What do I have that enables me to be a therapist? What are my skills? What are my resources? And so one of those things is I am intuitive. I am organized. I am a good listener. Does that make sense? So then we're going to go down and we'll look at the role of business owner. So first I ask the question, do I need to be intuitive to be a business owner? What are those characteristics? And I'll be like, yeah, I do. Okay, cool. Do I need to be smart to be a business owner? Yeah. Does being organized help? Yes, it does, right? So we can see that whilst we have 2 different roles, 3 of my characteristics go into these roles. Now let's again look at business owner. We're going to come up with a risk taker. I have to take risks as well. I also ask thought-provoking questions. Has to ask good questions as you're doing business. You can't just accept what people are giving to you. But even when you think about being a therapist, that goes into a therapist too, right? So last one, being a friend. We'll also see that being a good listener is also helpful. Being smart, we can think about as being a friend. Another one would be caring and loving. But let's be honest, all of those ones I can say, the skills that I have, also go into the other roles of being a therapist and a business owner. So I hope that kind of makes sense. So on the right side, I have therapist and doer, which is the role. On the left side, I have my characteristics such as caring, intuitive, good listener, organized, smart, and risk taker. That side with all those characteristics I just said is my identity. And that's because all of those things, all those characteristics enable me to fulfill the role that I have. The roles do not make me. I make the roles. So let me say that again. Your roles do not make you. You make the roles because of the characteristics and because of the skills that you have. So what does that mean? You can take those things anywhere and fulfill in whatever role it is. When they talk about transferable skills in jobs, it is the same thing with your identity. That is your core. That is who you are. So I hope that was super duper helpful. Whenever I do that and I show that example, people feel so relieved. And I'm just so happy. And, having this has helped me fill out bios better. I have a bio and it talks about all my roles. And I really want to have one where it just talks about who I am. And the last 2 sentences, it has my roles because who I am fulfills all those roles. So I hope that was really helpful. If you have any questions or need me to explain it again, just email me. But hopefully it was helpful for you. I've been thinking about doing a video on this. I haven't decided just yet. So thank you so much, as always, for listening to the podcast. And I hope you had some great takeaways and you can feel more secure and in your foundation and knowledge of knowing who you are as your identity. So my challenge is to you is the next time someone says who you are, have at least 2 things to explain who you are versus what you do in your roles. Thank you so much. Don't forget to share the podcast and follow us on all those channels on Instagram, Bianca Keisha, and on the podcast on iTunes and on Spotify. Go ahead and follow us and Google. Thank you so much. If you connected with what you just heard, please subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. You can stay connected by following the Instagram Bianca Keisha, spelled Keisha, Kesha, or visiting the website authenticwednesday.com. Remember, authenticity is a journey, not a destination.